Shut up and sit down.
Hello folks, welcome to part 2 of Ringo, the abandoned Beetle. So shall we start the diorama, folks? Why not? As you can see, I've got a bit of blue XPS foam here, and I've been sat in my lounge carving the bricks, folks. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I do it. I cut a little 35th scale brick pusher and glued that to a little bit of styrene tube. And what I do is I use that as a template just to mark me notches there using my knife into the XPS foam. And then I use the insert or the bending tabs from a photo etch bender. They've got all different shapes on them. And I can just press them into the foam, give them a wibble or a wobble. And then I can go along the major mortar lines and do the same, folks. You could also do this with a cocktail stick. And what I then tend to do is to get a texture on the bricks. I can either stipple them with my brush individually, or I can roll a ball of tin foil up and use it like a golf ball and roll it across the surface. I'm doing these individually on this wall at the moment because I want a little bit more control on this one. I've been along the coping stones at the top as well with the ball of foil, just to give them a nice texture. We can then go in and we can push back individual bricks or angle them slightly, so it looks like over time the mortar's weakened and the bricks have moved. Just creates a nice little effect. Also, the guy that built the wall, he might have had one too many beers as he put the wall up, so it just gives it a little bit of character. So we just carry on doing that. As you can see, I've been along the top there and scribed me lines, just drew them on with a pencil. And then I can go along now, same as before. Use this as a little guide, put a little reference mark in the foam, like so. And then just repeat the process for each brick. Now you can get knives that have got like 5 blades in them, so you can do like 5 rows at once. So there are many ways of doing this to speed the process up. But I kind of find it therapeutic doing individual rows myself. Again, just go round and stipple the texture on. This is a shortened synthetic brush. I've trimmed the bristles right down and it's made it quite dense, but it just lets me get a nice consistent texture across the brickwork. Works for me. As you can see, you could just start adding cracks to any bricks. You can knock corners out. You can take bricks out of the wall if you want, where a car's come in and knocked the wall as it's come into the garage area. So many things you can do to make it your own. So it's going along the edge of these capstones. Again, just rounding off the edges. So it looks like over time where people have been over the wall, climbed it or sat on it, it just started wearing the edges of the capstones away. Again, just do another few bricks, work my way along, like so. And then we can start shaping them ones. Remember to alternate your brick lines as well, folks. Okay. So bear that in mind, otherwise you're going to have irregular patterns. Just work our way along a course at a time, like so. It's nice and easy, folks. So we should be able to actually just work our way along and get this entire little corner mapped out so that we can then get this little piece of wall done. And we can start then thinking about priming, protecting the foam, etc. I tend to use a bit of Mod Podge or very thin down PVA, and I do many coats over the foam just to seal the foam. And then later on that'll make it able to accept enamel washes without damaging the foam basically. So we'll just go along now, start rounding off the edges of the bricks, just giving them a bit of depth in the mortar. And that will be this little corner finished up. Just keep repeating the process. You can round these off as much or as little as you choose. But bear in mind, I'm going quite deep because I've got mortar that I'm going to be adding just to give the cement effect of mortar. So I'm just giving it a jiggle, working it all the way along, making sure I catch all the little bits that I want. You can go deeper on some so that as the mortar has come out, you can see a little bit of the edge of the brick where it's been exposed by damaged mortar, because that way you can get the tweezers out and you can tuck a little bit of moss in there just to give it a little bit of character. Now doing with the wider insert, just rolling up underneath the faces of the brick. Just give me a nice deep mortar line all the way along. And it'll just give you the same effect as you can see on the bottom courses there. Just jiggling in it quite happily. Apologies for it being off camera there. I was doing a live stream at the time when I was doing this. I didn't quite notice that I'd gone off camera, so I apologise for that. But all I'm doing is I'm just working my way along the scribed lines, as you can now see. Okay. And again, I did the same along the top there for these coping stones. And that gives you that nice standard brick effect going all the way along there. And I can just now texturise any of the bricks that I may have missed. Use some pressure or more pressure on some bricks than others, just so that they look like they're a little bit more battered and a bit worn. Some areas you can go and not put any texture on because it looks like a new course of brick has been put in for repair purposes. So again, it gives you a transition between new and old brickwork. Perhaps someone's restored it previously or repointed some of the bricks. I'm just going along with the brush, and then I can do some of the ends there. I'll give it a little twist just to round off some corners, ready for when the moss goes in at the end of the build. And just work your way along all the edges of the bricks, just so that you've got somewhere for your mortar to settle and adhere to when you put your mortar in. Pretty straightforward process, really is. As simple as it looks. I find it quite therapeutic myself. And then random bricks, I'll just give a little jiggle. Either push an end in or I'll push the whole brick in, couple of mil, just so that it sits back. So that when this is all painted and had its dust effects, etc., just gives you that little bit raggedy wall look of an old wall that has aged and settled over time. The temptation is to do a lot of bricks with the brick pusher, but try not to go too mad with it. And then we can use the toothpick now just to round off some of the corners and bore deeper so that it looks like bits of mortar have popped out the corners. And then I just use the toothpick just to pick a few holes in some of the bricks as if they're beginning to crumble. And then I can just give it a jiggle, like so. And that gives you the beginnings of a pretty passable brick wall, I think, anyway. And again, just come back at it as you see fit. I tend to rest these at the corner of the bench and then come back to them just to see whether I need to add any extra details. Saves me overdoing it at this stage. Again, just choose areas that you think may have had more wear. And bear in mind, this is going to have a post along the top there, about 2, maybe 3 courses down, where the tarpaulin's going to have been folded or rolled around a beam, and the beam has been nailed to the wall. So I'm trying to bear that in mind where I'm doing the brick pushing and the texturing, because that will be hidden. Just going round now, just double checking some of the depth, ready for anticipating where the mortar's going to go even. Because where I've pushed some of the bricks back, the depth will need to be amended slightly to compensate for that. Now I can just stipple randomly across the wall. I tend to turn the wall around quite a bit when I'm doing this, just so that I don't end up with patterns, because the human brain does like patterns. And if you don't turn things around, sometimes you could end up with like a zebra stripe effect. I'm not worried about the bottom edge there, because that will be getting trimmed with the hot wire cutter. So I'm not fussed about that at the moment. But as you can see, I think you'll agree, it's not a bad little facsimile of a wall. I'm happy with it. Like I say, it's got a breeze block base where the foundations of the wall go into the ground, and then the brickwork has been laid on top of them. It just gives a nice little wall, I think. And then the car will be sat in front of that, looking rather sorry for itself, as you can see in the bottom left corner. Probably add a few bits of graffiti on the wall. Possibly a few pieces of an old drum kit, because it is Ringo, the abandoned Beetle. So we might have a few symbols in the car, and perhaps a drum ring or something discarded against the wall. We'll see. I'll just go round now and stipple the edges of these rounded edges, just to give that a bit more texture. And then we can see how that's looking. And I'm quite happy with that, so I'll park that for a while. Otherwise I'll fettle. Right. So there's Ringo. At this stage, he's not had any washes or anything, because I want to do all of that when I've got the base together, just so that I can marry the base and the vehicle together with the rain effects and things like that. There's the dent in the roof there where someone's jumped off the wall and landed on the car. That's going to have a little bit of resin in there that is going to be stained with some green. So it looks a bit mossy, watery. And then there'll be some boss deposits over the roof, around the rubbers and things like that. But we need to figure out the base now. So I'm going to have a bit of an odd shape going on for the base. We need to figure that out. And we've, as you can see, got a few bits of broken glass there where stones or an air pistol's been fired at the glass and it's cracked it. So we've got a bit of that going in. And again, we'll have some washes over that with some staining, so you get like moss marks where the glass crack edges are, things like that. So we can then start thinking about getting this base laid out. So starting off with a piece of cardboard, and then we can bring in our bits and pieces. Now I've drawn a little line across the back at an angle, as you can see. And I just want to line my wall up against that, like so. Because then I shall go through and cut the edges of the wall once I've got the shape that I'm after for the base. I just want it at a jaunty angle. We can then put the car on And then I'll just lightly sketch a little contour just around the diode there, just to give it a little bit of shape. I don't want a perfectly square diode, so I'll just round the corners off at the front, like so. Just so that it's sat on a little bit of a patio, perhaps a little bit of mud, some grass tufts, that sort of thing. But I kind of want the car and the wall to do the talking, not the ground that it's sat on. It's quite minimalist that I'm going for. Like so. Just round it around the front of the car. And then where that wall comes out, again, just dip in slightly. And that will just give me a little bit of a character to the base there. Just like that. And then I could cut this shape with a pair of scissors just to see how it looks, and then I'll stick my foam to it and I'll use the cardboard as a template to guide the hot wire from the cutter. That's the theory anyway. The reality will probably be something completely different with me, but I'll have a go. I'm just sitting there, just thinking on how the angle of the wall's going to be at the back, whether I do it at a 45 degree or not. So whilst I'm thinking of that, we'll just trim this base and start getting that ready to accept the wall component, and we'll do a test fit of everything before I then run everything through the cutter. So nice sharp pair of scissors. Just go round, cut my shape to what I want. Work my way around the contours. Now I will be putting an edge veneer on this, so I don't want to go too extreme with my curves, but it should be able to conceal any wire marks or anything like that on the foam. We'll just trim that off, and then we can come across the back there and lose that angled piece there. And that will now give me my base that I can attach to a piece of foam ready for cutting. So here's the table cutter that I use. It's a hot wire cutter. It's got loads of guides on it. It's all nice and warm, and I can just use the guide to run the foam through against the straight edge. And I can remove that now wrinkly bottom edge that I didn't want. This is all double-sided tape that I've put on the base. I can then peel this off, and then this will be stuck to a piece of foam. And then I can use it as a former to run the hot wire around. So I'll just lift the protective film off the tape. Now it's attached to the foam. I can just use the wire against the edge of the cardboard and start removing little bits and pieces out of it. I can always sand the edges perfectly smooth. So I'm going about 1 millimetre from the edge so that I can do the rest just by hand, just to smooth it off. This table cutter really is an absolute godsend for this sort of work, folks. They really are worth their weight in gold. And I'll just gently go in, make a few notches before I turn the corner. And then we can come round and lose it right at that front edge between me thumbs. Bink, there you go. So that's that sorted. I've put toothpicks in the base of the wall there so that I can use them to mark holes, so that when I line this wall up, when it comes to joining the diorama together, I can reinforce the join by using them cocktail sticks and keep them in there. That's given me 3 little guide holes now, so when this goes together, I haven't got to worry, and it'll be joined with fast tack glue as well, folks, okay? Or I might even double-sided tape it yet. I haven't decided. So that's what the holes are for. I often get asked that when I do these, and that's what I use, DIY Dr. double-sided tape, folks. Again, there's a few rough edges where the cuts have been at the front there, but I can sand them back quite happily. Ready for when the veneer goes on, but initially I just wanted the cuts done so that I could lose the excess foam. But I certainly would recommend investing in one of these tables. They are an absolute godsend. I'm just going to elongate my holes. We'll see whether or not we can lock the edges of this wall whilst we've got it attached. So I've put some double-sided tape down. We can now join this. I'm using the table base as a nice good flat surface so that I can get this angle right. We can now pop off the edges of this wall like so. Gets rid of the excess parts that I don't need. And then when the veneer goes on this will join that all together quite nicely. I was working my way all the way along there and getting that angle that I want. And as you can see, it's just giving it a little bit more character. So we can sit the car on, see how it looks. I'm happy with that. So that's now ready to have all the edges of that foam smoothed off. Here I am making the patio slabs, just a very, very thin bit of that foam. And I've got to describe the slab surface on there. And I'm actually going to mount these individually using super tacky PVA. Reason being is I can have different levels of stone. I can drop some of the corners, but I have a nice wide grout joint as well as an area where moss can come through. I'm using Avery sand and grit. You can get these for reptile houses, bird cages, things like that. But it is perfect for this sort of thing. It's a nice thick gravelly texture. And it's nice and coarse. We then got a bit of VMS Smart Mud going down. Or we can start working this round with a spudger and your fingers. I prefer the finger method, to be honest with you folks. For me, you can just get in there and give it a right old pressing. I'm just working it away around towards the slabs and the edges there. And then I'll probably attach me veneer so that then I can marry the VMS Smart Mud up to the edge of the veneer and maintain a nice edge. But for the moment, I'm focusing just on the paving slab area. Just trying to get that in situ. Just press it in there. Let it conform. Let it do its thing. You can moisten your finger just to give it a little bit more bite. I've got a bowl of water just beside there that I can moisten my fingers with. But I'm doing it almost with a chamfer at the moment towards the edge of the foam, knowing that I've got the veneer going on. I can then catch any additional areas with another layer of Smart Mud. This will then be covered with static grass at a later stage. But for the moment, just really get the mud in there. Don't be afraid at this stage to put a bit of pressure on, because that's what you want. And again, where the gravel has gone over the edges of the stones, I can go back with a shortened bristle stiff brush and I can brush the excess gravel off. But over time, the gravel will go over the stones anyway in the garden. If you've got an old patio, you'll notice this. As moss grows, it pushes the gravel up and over the stones. So it does happen. Just work my way around the contours there of the curve. And then we can start heading back towards the brick wall with the side by my left hand. And that will be the first layer of Smart Mud down then. Some of these stones are going to be broken up shortly. And again, you'll have bits of gravel, detritus. but I want to make an indent now where I melted the base of the tyres. It's going to give me a mounting point where I can put the epoxy glue, and then I can go back and put grass and moss around the tyres. For me, it just gives me a good attachment point for the car, so it doesn't keep coming off the dyno. Again now, see, I could use it as a template to push the mud against, just to get the shape of where them flat tyres are sitting. And then I can wet it with a brush at a later stage. And that will be my glue attachment points done then, so I'll be happy with that. But yeah, the VMS Smart Mud is a really good product to use for this sort of thing. It's in the armoury now, and I'm going to be using this a lot more going forward. It's really is nice to work with. It certainly adheres well. Got a lovely texture to it. And again, you can airbrush it, spray it whatever colour you want. Obviously, you can all your static grass will stick to it. We just work this in with a spudger, just pressing it into the stones. I want to try and put it under one of the stones so that it lifts the corner. It just looks like the ground has settled and the stone is popping up. And then we can start pressing it just into that little corner. And then once the veneer goes round the side, we can then, as I said, just put a little bit of contour on the ground and bring it up towards the edge of the veneer, almost like a little gully. And again, I've knocked a brick out the corner of the wall there so I can put some mud in there, because there's going to be a nice tuft of moss and grass poking out there. Just wedging it into that corner at the front there. And it is beginning to come together quite nicely. Just now going in, just added a few little divots, contours, areas where the mud has come up over the edge of the stone there. And then we can just start feathering it out now towards the edge. Again, if you've gone over the edge of your slabs there, you can just scrape it back just to reaffirm the profile there, just to highlight it, bring it back nice and square. And then if there's any deep voids, you can just go in and press a bit more mud in place. We've got a bottle of water there. I've been over and I've moistened the surface a little, just so that I can now go around with me spudger and shape this where these flat tyres are going to sit a bit more, just to give it a bit more definition. And then once I've put the veneer around, I can build this layer of mud up a little bit more if needed. And I think that's coming together quite nicely. Now I've attached me veneer, as you can see, and this is where now I can bring more smart mud into play, just to bring the ground up with the edge of that veneer there, just to give it a bit more depth. It's quite a bit higher. I can go round and trim the veneer down a tad, but now that it's in place, it's worth spending a bit of time on this stage. As you saw, it's a nice bit of walnut veneer going on, and I think it just creates a nice effect. This will be going on the back side of the wall as well, and the edges. It protects the foam against knocks. And as you can see now, just pressing this into the veneer, any voids now between the base and this edge will be filled quite nicely with the VMS mud. So I'm about 5mm further or higher with the veneer than I want to be, but I'm keeping that there for a reason at the moment. It's letting me push this spudger against that edge to get all of the mud into any gaps, any nooks and crannies. And then I can trim the veneer down once the mud has hardened. Again, just go around with your fingers, press the mud into any areas where there's a void, and using your spudger, you can now press right tightly into that veneer and get that all nice and neatly in place. Nice shape there forming. And like I say, when this is fully hardened, I'll have a nice, good, solid surface that I can run my blade along. And then I can sand any edges, apply any extra VMS to tidy things up once the cutting has been done. As you can see, I've veneered the back and sides of the wall as well. Now they're ready. Then again, any imperfections or joins I can go around and fill and then sand the veneer as I choose to do so. I want to work on this little area at the front there, just so that it's a nice, neat edge, because it's going to be the most visible part of the little vignette. Just double check everything's coming together, and then we can come along this side and we'll start wrapping this episode up. Over the next episode, we'll be doing all of the painting of the brickwork and weathering of it, etc. But for the moment, that's a good stage where we're coming to the edge of this. I can let this all cure then, and then we can trim this, and hopefully when we come back in part 3, we'll be ready then to do some painting, some weathering, and bringing this little brick wall and patio together. So in the meantime, thanks for watching. Remember, like and subscribe. You can also become a channel member, or you can support me on Patreon to keep the content coming. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye for now.
Hey kid, don't ever let them get inside your head. They'll tell you what to do in life instead of everything you know that you could get. Don't let them guide your life towards regret. I'll fight for what I love with every breath. My past is filled with things I won't forget. I use them all to push me to my best. So treat the worst of times just like a test. If only I could go back in time, I'd tell myself that everything will end up alright. Just push yourself, test yourself, figure out what you like, and find your limits, don't be rigid, always work towards a prime. Surround yourself with open minds, people can change your life. A few friends with intent can help you feel alive. Find a passion, take some action, and with a little time, just be patient, make a statement, try to enjoy your life. They'll try to kick you while you're down,